Okay, so we are officially in this game. We've got our characters picked, we've got our ending selected, we've had our first turn, and we're raring to go. You feeling pretty good so far?
Oh yeah, I'm the bounty hunter, man. I'm feeling fantastic.
Yeah, you would. I'm not gonna dwell on it though. I'm not gonna be salty. I might be evil, but that's not the same as salty. It's cool though, I can be an evil druid.
Druid?
Indeed. So here we are in this fully expansion enabled game, getting ready to make our way to the ending, the new Nether Realm ending.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how that actually going to play out. Because of the endings that you were telling me before, they all seemed pretty terrifying, and Pandora's box is one of them that is pretty hardcore because it could swing either way, which I think is why I like it so much.
Yeah, I feel like that hard swing of like, oh, I made it to the middle, I'm gonna win the game, everything's going my way, to, oops, the other guy I was trying to attack is way more prepared than I thought he was, and now I'm in trouble. I feel like that's a common thing in Talisman. The whole question of when do you go to the middle? And if you go too soon, does that end up costing you the game? Or if you wait too long, does that end up costing you the game? So many of these games get decided based on who goes for the ending at what point, I feel like.
I feel that. I also feel that there's such like there are bouts of luck and bouts of unluckiness, I should say. And it just again those swings are so hard because I mean you know me because we've played this together now forever. Talisman, we've been just hardcore fans of this. And I can't tell you how many games that I've had personally while we were both playing where it would look like I'd just be down and out, and for whatever reason, I would get a really fortunate line of cards and all of a sudden be like back in the game.
Absolutely. And I feel like as they've added expansion packs and added house rules and all these subtle refinements to the game over the years now, like literally years now, it's so much harder to predict how the game is actually gonna go. I did that How to Talisman series a couple of months back where I played through a vanilla game for people who have never played the game before to kind of get them up to speed on the basics of how the game works. And I was really reminded going back and playing the vanilla game again just how simple it feels by comparison to the level of complexity we have here now with all these expansions enabled.
Oh, the various ways that each one of them can impact a game are just are really crazy, and how just prepared you need to be in order to do some of them. Because like the city I feel like is very deceiving because it seems easy at first, but there are some definite encounters in there that can really really take advantage of you, to put it nicely.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
A nice starter area, though, I would have to say is what is the one at the bottom left of the board proper?
The Highlands.
The Highlands. That I feel like is a much easier card to digest in terms of just going in there out the gate. Granted, still again, just as the city, there are still some encounters that are very hard, but it's still nowhere near as difficult as say the dungeon is.
Absolutely. I feel like in a lot of ways, it's almost like the difficulty kind of starts in the upper left corner with the city. I would argue that you can walk into the city almost from the first turn of the game, and while there are things in there that are gonna mess you up if you get unlucky, for the most part, it's a generally safe area of the board. And then kind of as you go clockwise around the board, I feel like the Highlands is probably your next easiest or next safest bet. And I would assume that when the Wilderness comes at some point and it fills in that lower right corner, that'll kind of be somewhere in between the Highlands and the dungeon in terms of difficulty.
I'm eagerly awaiting that one. I want to see just where it's going to land in terms of difficulty or luck to unlucky draws in terms of all these other expansions. Because at this point, we kind of know, again, where like the city stands and the Highland stands and the dungeon stands, but it's like, where's the Wilderness going to be in terms of difficulty?
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I just want to make sure that I actually get this spell off. There we go.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, it was
You're
a
going to need it.
fortunate initial draw there. Yeah, didn't even have to use the fate. I will take it. And monies.
Well played. I'm just going for card draws. Yeah, this should be easy.
Love those sound effects.
Oh, they're horrifying. Ooh. Take one life from another character.
Glad there's an AI in this game.
Well, that is sort of the bounty hunter's thing, right? I mean, he's just sort of likes blood and he wants to drink more of it.
Yeah, it's a very appropriate quest for him, for sure.
And the biggest dick move about the bounty hunter is any situation he finds himself in, he gets paid a gold for it. No matter how it shakes out.
I'm gonna do my typical visit the Enchantress while I don't have as much to lose thing. Ooh, yeah.
Nice roll.
Millhouse.
Oh, I can go to the inner ring if I wanted to, but I'm so close to you guys. I can't pass up a free ride to the middle. And I draw a card that makes me miss a turn. Oh wow, never mind, we all lose a turn because we're all evil.
Yeah, I was gonna say. That card was not our special friend.
Interesting how that works out.
Quite.
Ooh.
Oh, money's just falling all over the place.
Yeah. Ooh, the AI really, they had a tough time on that roll.
Ironic.
Yeah, usually they're pretty good about that.
Well, I was gonna say, I feel like the AI is something I really want to pay attention to in this game because playing against it earlier, I definitely felt as though it was a notch up above anything I had seen previously from the AI in this game. It was very aggressive. I only really saw it make one really big mistake in terms of decision making, and it definitely felt like it was in it to win it in a way that the AI in this game typically hasn't in the past.
Ah. Yeah, well, speaking of luck, uh, oh,
Oh no, horrifying.
it was such a low roll. I felt like I had to at least try at it.
I don't blame you at all. A very legitimate strategy there. So I think now that we're actually getting into the meat of the game proper, we can sort of safely start delving into some of our other topics, would you say?
Yeah, yeah. I feel like it's time.
Cool. So one thing I thought would be fun, and we're going to try it out for this episode, quote unquote, and see how it goes, would be to just talk a little bit about various games that we've been playing other than Talisman, which is kind of how we used to do the show back when we were doing it on a regular basis. But really want to just focus on kind of what you've been playing sort of mindset. I know there's quite a few games actually that we've both been playing recently, or at least both had some kind of exposure to. I guess maybe let's start out with something that's a little closer to Talisman in terms of like the whole fantasy aesthetic. Maybe let's talk a little bit about TERA, because that's one of those games that was kind of on my radar and on my list and kind of in the back of my mind for a long time as something that I thought I might want to check out or play at some point, and just never really got around to doing it until fairly recently. I think there's some interesting things about that game that are maybe worth discussing, but let's, I guess, talk a little bit first about what that game actually is to kind of start things off. So, what I think of when I think of that game is sort of a traditional by the numbers MMO. And I guess one of the things that's interesting about it is the fact that it started out life as a MMO that you paid for and then pay a monthly fee to continue to play, whereas now it's completely gone over to the free to play side of things. And I guess for me, what that makes me think of a lot is the whole idea of what if a game like World of Warcraft were to take that path, is how I feel about TERA and the experience of playing TERA as a free to play game similar or comparative to what the experience of playing something like World of Warcraft would be if it were to ever take that path?
Well, and I think that's an interesting question because, especially when you have somebody like Blizzard backing such a game, and the legacy that World of Warcraft has carried with it now, it almost, you have to sit there and you have to really wonder what would they do if they were to ever make that jump to free to play from a monthly subscription. How would they change the game and tool the game to be more of a pay for your experience rather than just well, and granted, you're still paying a monthly fee for your experience, but you know what I'm saying, where it'd be possibly paywalls that you would have to get around in order to maybe level up or get certain gear, which I think that's one of the reasons why they're maybe opposed to doing something like that, because they're afraid that they would receive backlash for maybe taking the game in that direction.
Well, I think it's interesting. It's also your turn, by the way.
Oh, sure. Whoops.
That's all right. I think it's interesting because TERA started its life as a complete game. It's not, I think when you talk about MMOs in particular, you have two kinds of MMOs, right? You have the MMOs that were built from the beginning to be a free to play game, and then you have games that were built for pay or for a subscription that eventually became free to play. I always notice it whenever you see games that were premium games that went free to play, I always feel like those games have some of the best experiences for new players, because what generally ends up happening when a game like that goes free to play is they typically don't tinker too much with the new player experience for the most part. And I think this is actually an area where Blizzard could learn a lot, and where I'd like to see them kind of follow suit and follow more with what the rest of the industry does in this regard. Because when you look at something like WoW, where they have the whole play to level 20 for free thing, I think that's not really enough of a free to play option for that game. Especially when you look at how other games handle it, where they do things like vanity pets or other vanity items that let you spend real world money on the game without actually having to commit to doing that to have the basic experience. In a game like TERA, or in a lot of these games that are retrofitted for free to play, they don't necessitate that you spend real world money to have the bulk of the game experience. It's more about end game content or vanity content or expanded content and that sort of thing. And I know, like, for example, I know you've been playing Dungeons and Dragons Online recently, and I feel like that's another good example of a game that started out as a premium game and went free to play, but only made the expansion content or the additional content a premium cost.
Yeah, and I could comment on that further. I really like the way that DDO is set up. Dungeons and Dragons Online is sort of structured, because you can easily play that whole game right now. It's just the expansive content is the stuff that you would have to pay extra money for. But I sort of like that system, because, and there's also things like premium currency, and that's obviously found in a lot of free-to-play games, or basically all of them. In order to get like premium items from the store page, you have to buy premium currency, buy the item, circle of purchasing, so to speak, within free-to-play games. But again, the way that DDO does it, I actually really enjoy, and I really appreciate that. The full experience is there. It's just all the extra stuff. Like, if you are really hooked to the game and just want more content, that's where you pay extra in order to get more out of your experience. And I feel like good free-to-play games are exactly that, where it's like you get the entire experience, but just to improve that experience, you pay money. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, and I think the irony of that to me is that that's something that's kind of happened by accident as a result of these premium games going free to play. But really, if you think about it from a design standpoint, that's really how the game should have been built all along. You give somebody that good core premium experience for free, and then sell them on the expansion content, or sell them on the world building content, or the thing that makes them more personally invested in the game as a result. And I think you talk a lot about why MMOs as a genre have kind of stagnated, and things that have happened to kind of alleviate that stagnation. And I think that that is a case where that business decision to turn the MMO into a freemium or a free-to-play model actually exposed something that would make a good technique in designing a new MMO from scratch, if somebody were to pick up on that.
Sure, giving players that premium experience for free, and then any of the expansive content, because once they are invested in a character, people will be more than willing, as long as the pricing is reasonable for the content that they're getting, exchange for the money that they're putting in, then it sort of just levels itself out and makes it understandable that, okay, if you're really into this game and you just want more of this experience, then pay this amount of money and you get what you want in return, whether it's a pet or a piece of expansive content, and so on and so forth.
So, kind of going beyond that analysis of their business model, I think thinking about actually playing the game itself and the experience of playing that, I will say there are a lot of things that I enjoy about that game. And it's ironic in a way because I feel like a lot of the things that I like about TERA are the things that give me sort of nostalgic feelings for WoW. I often say, if WoW was free to play, I'd probably still be playing it or probably still tinker around with it occasionally. And I feel like TERA as a game has a lot of things about it that harken back to some of the things that I really like about WoW. Things like epic scale, the sense of place and the sense of being in a large open world, and having this journey that you take as you go from one area to another and rid the land of whatever nasty stuff is going on in the place that you're currently visiting. That stuff is cool, right? Those things work regardless of the game that you're talking about because they're just good, fundamental, desirable qualities for any game to have. And it's kind of weird that in my mind I associate those things with WoW because that was really the first game to ever nail that stuff for me. But it's kind of interesting how any game really that trades in those same concepts or has those same elements to it that are done well can evoke those same feelings for me.
Oh, for sure. Well, and for me, and you know me, in terms of anytime it has something to do with role-playing games, I have to be connected with that world. And I feel like TERA does a good job of putting you and basically creating a sense of place in the universe that they've created. And that's a hard thing to do, especially in today's market where there's so many MMOs to pick from, and yet some of them just sort of feel like carbon copies of WoW, and not even like good vanilla WoW, but like sort of WoW modern day, where it's just very, and I don't know if the word is just casualized. I feel like that's the wrong word to use here, but it's definitely easier to digest, and it really sort of just takes away that sense of exploration and wonder that I feel like the vanilla version of WoW had.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's something that I would say about TERA is I do feel like it leans closer towards the new WoW kind of mindset and mechanics than say anything from old WoW or old school WoW. But in terms of the actual environments and the phasing that they're doing as you go through quest lines and the idea that you kind of feel like you're part of something or if you feel like you're in an actual place that has actual weight to it, I feel like that's probably the thing that's been most noticeable for me in playing that game so far. And granted, I'm only, I think on my highest level character in TERA, I'm only up to about level 13 right now, so I'm barely just out of the first quest hub area. But at the same time, it's funny to me how much I get the feel of some of those classic MMO experiences that I've had in the past out of that game. And I guess the other thing that it reminds me of is that I'm pretty convinced at this point that I would never want to pay a monthly fee to have that kind of experience. but I can definitely see how kicking a couple of bucks their way for this item or this pet or this whatever would be something I might do because I'm getting enough enjoyment and enough of a nostalgia pang from playing the game that it's doing something for me.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel that, especially with that is not going to end well. Especially with sort of the way that the game has opened up, because we are still, at least I am still in the hub city, but I feel like I really don't know what's going to actually occur next in terms of where I'm going to go from the tutorial area that I was in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like I have a bit of an advantage at this point, having seen the first quest hub and kind of seeing how things play out as a result of that. I feel like I'm a little bit more invested in the game as a result of having reached that point. I could see how somebody might not think much of that game based on the introductory area or the tutorial or what have you, but I feel like that game, it's a little bit of a slow burn to me, where you have to get through the tutorial and you have to kind of get established in the game. And then the sort of locomotion of the game and how it's put together starts to kind of hit once you get to a certain point.
Well, it makes me curious to play more of it beyond the hub city that I'm currently stuck in.
Mm-hmm.
And not stuck, but just sort of stationed at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I will say the one sort of negative thing that I have to say about TERA based on what I've played of it so far is I'm not completely sold on the combat system in that game. They did a lot, especially when that game first came out, to kind of hype it up as being this very different and innovative and distinct combat system versus what's typically done in MMOs. And I definitely think they kind of oversold it to a large extent, because to me, that combat system is not particularly great. I'm kind of getting used to it and I'm kind of getting accustomed to various aspects of it, but there are definitely things about it that I really am not a huge fan of. Probably chief among those things being the fact that most every ability that I've used on both of the characters that I have so far has required me to plant my feet and basically stand still to be able to do it. I'm definitely not a huge fan of that. I don't like the fact that I'm not as mobile in that game as I would like to be.
I could see that, especially since my character that I roll with is a ranger, and I feel like some of her abilities too even hinder me, because you have to like be planted in order to use a couple of the different shots. And for me, I would have liked to be, it's like I'm a ranger. You would think that my whole thing is that I'm more mobile than people, and still, like, my base attack, I can still move around and do stuff, but it is the spells that really should, I feel like some of them should be able to be cast as you're moving and running around.
Yeah, like more instant casts versus channeled spells and abilities and stuff would definitely be appreciated, I think. And I feel like it would just make the combat feel a little more fluid and a little more dynamic and a little more interesting, which is kind of what I was expecting it to be like. The having to be stationary in so many cases definitely makes the combat in that game feel a lot more stilted and kind of structured than I was necessarily hoping for or expecting. So that's definitely a thing.
Another thing for me personally is I'm having a little bit of trouble, like, really connecting with the sort of narrative that they have, because I don't know really if there's not much one there, or it's just really not sort of something that I'm really interested in personally. But that's just like more of a personal gripe. Not really so much mechanically, just as a. And I don't know if it's like the art style or just the story proper that I'm not a fan of, but that's just my 2 cents.
The thing I would say about the narrative aspects of the game, based on what I've seen so far, is that it all feels very generic and very rote and very simplistic. Like, I feel like so often in games, narrative is just used as a means to an end. We're good guys, they're bad guys, we need to go fight them. End of story. And I feel like that's kind of what you see in that game. They use the most basic, unsophisticated motivations for why things are done or why things are happening. And you're just kind of meant to follow along and get on the hype train with all the other adventurers, right? And, that's fine in the sense that I don't know that every game necessarily needs to have an amazing storyline, even a good storyline to be a good game. But it certainly doesn't hurt if the story motivates you in some way.
Well, sure. It's just for me, again, RPGs, in order to feel like invested in the character, for me, I have to be invested in that world or the events that are happening in that world. I'm not like turned off by it yet. It's not like it's not offensive or anything. It's just not particularly compelling yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could definitely understand why that would be the case. I definitely haven't seen anything from the narrative stuff in that game that's made me go, oh wow, this is something particularly riveting or interesting, but I think we've pretty thoroughly established at this point that I'm more of a mechanics guy than a narrative guy anyway, so that kind of makes sense.
Oh, why couldn't he double up?
No, that'll be when we draw the basilisk.
I gotta say, man, that sorceress is deadly.
She's kind of killing it, right?
I mean, she's wrecking me. I know that. She stole my warhorse, and then into combat with her, and I forgot that she stole my warhorse, and then she beat me in combat and took my strength belt.
Mm-hmm.
Not fun times going on right now with that AI.
I definitely feel as though the AI has become more cunning. Yeah, I guess I would say cunning in the way that it chooses to do or not do certain things. I definitely get that sense from what I'm seeing of its play since the patch.